I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insight, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human questions. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Louise Callin is the founder and CEO of ReelLife Conversations, a social care technology company helping families, carers, and care providers create meaningful conversations for people living with dementia. After nearly 30 years leading technology and transformation for global corporations, Louise left to build something with more direct impact. Her mum's dementia journey inspired the idea: technology should make care more human, not less. Since launching the business, she's secured venture capital investment, shown real-world results, and is building partnerships across the UK and internationally. Louise, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Pharma Prescribed today. For those of our audience who are not familiar with you, what is the mission you're on?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Very much appreciated. I care about using technology to support human-to-human connection. I genuinely believe that technology can support and help social care become more human. And there's obviously always a concern that technology will do the opposite thing and it will make care somehow less human if technology is involved. This is something that I fundamentally disagree with if used correctly and if used responsibly. And that's what I'm all about.
The human-to-human connection is clearly incredibly important, and taking the technology away from that, but still being central to the conversation. Your experience with your mother and her dementia clearly has driven something in you to make the choice that this would be your purpose and your mission and everything you work towards. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit further, please?
No, of course. One of the things that my family has always loved is photos. Photographs are really important to us in some way, shape, or form. Like many families, there's lots of physical photographs from the past, and now there is becoming more and more digital photographs. Brilliant. One of the things Mum and I love to do, I would often print out a whole load of photos, either from my camera or I would snap photos of her photos without her really knowing. And then I would lay them all out on the coffee table. And she and I would really enjoy looking at individual pictures. One of the things that I realized, I actually had a superpower and I didn't know it all these years. My superpower was that I had some third eye, an ability to be able to look at other photos on the coffee table and link our conversation to that picture. So we would be talking about something and I would be looking at the photos and finding other things that I could then pick up that second photo and go, well, look at this one. For example, it might be a person linked in some way. It might be a place. So we might be talking about Cambridge, which is where we grew up. And so there'd be a photo that we were looking at that was to do with Cambridge. And then I would be scouting around the table trying to find the next picture. That natural conversation was then much more obvious. Also with dementia, the short-term memory of what you were just talking about is often very challenging and so can make conversation and interaction much harder. Having some photos that actually help you continue with that was a really good thing. So imagine all of the photos on the table, and then I would end my visit to my mum and I would pop them back in the little photo album. We've all seen those. And I would leave them on the coffee table. Then other people that would come in to support my mum, help my mum, professional carers or other visitors, friends, family. I started to realize that the photos weren't being opened as much as I would like unless I was there. So one day I spoke to one of my mum's supporters and said, why don't you use them? She said, actually, I find it really difficult because I don't know who all those people are. And I often don't know the story behind the picture. At that point, I had a moment. At that point, it was like, I don't use the photos because of their context, because of the people in them. I use the photos as a way of bringing some conversation to life. If my mum recognized a face, fantastic. We could talk about that face and I would know who that was. But what I was doing was not only finding places and faces in the picture, I was using colors. I was using objects in the picture. I was effectively analyzing that picture real time, finding something to talk about in it. And then I was looking at other photos to try and find other things that connected those together. So if we were talking about what I can see in front of me now, which is you in your room, I would be talking about the green plant. And oh God, I love those. I'm not very good at, I wish I was better at looking after plants. And then we might look out into the garden and then we would talk about some of the plants in the garden. Then what I would be doing is then finding another photo with a flower or a plant or something in it. And I would go, I wouldn't talk about the pear. This does not make natural conversation. But I would go and find another photo that linked those things together in some way. That was the thing that I could do, but others found much more challenging. They felt that the photo was about just the people and the place. And if they didn't have the context, they didn't feel that they were a useful tool. And that's what I fundamentally disagreed with. I fundamentally believed that photographs are just a conversation waiting to happen, regardless of what you know about the picture or indeed remember about the picture. Because the photos shouldn't be a memory test. They are there as a supporting actor in the conversation. It doesn't matter what you remember. There's so much more in every picture than just a place and a face. That was a very long-winded way of answering your question. Sorry.
That is such a compelling insight. Whilst you were talking through the visual context and what your brain does, I was thinking you're such a visual person. And from a technology corporate background, that may have followed you through your career. I don't know, but what a superpower it is. As you were telling that as well, I was thinking, my goodness, Louise has got to be a natural storyteller. And I bet you tell great bedtime stories to your kids. But that's as an aside, because connecting that back now to your mother and how that translated into natural storytelling. And as you mentioned, not a memory test. This is the key, isn't it, for dementia? Patients and people and caregivers do not want it to be a test of memory. What do you remember about that? It's what do you recognize, what do you see, and perhaps what that might stimulate in the mind of the person with dementia. Could you elaborate on that a little bit further, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, 100%. This is the absolute essence of, for me, what this is all about. How many times have you held a picture up and said, oh, do you remember when? The words that we try and avoid actively when working with someone with dementia or supporting someone with dementia or just visiting your family member. Do you remember when? Instantly, if you don't, you feel like you've failed. That is not a position that we want to put anybody in. It is all about unlocking what do you know. So you could turn that really easily into, gosh, I remember when. Instantly, the language is turned around. And what that then does is unlock the ability for that person to either go, I remember that too. And if they don't, they still haven't failed. But if you're talking about a color, how funny, you're in there, you're wearing your black t-shirt, I'm wearing my black dress. I love black. I always feel comfortable in black, but Mum, you look so good in green. We've always laughed about green clothes for Mum. Then instantly you create something that's personal. It's deep. It's much more meaningful than, do you remember the time where you wore that green top? No, I don't. Sorry about that. Fail. That's not what we're trying to do.
That's fascinating. Again, what does green mean to your mother? Because green is also a color that's important to my wife. It's the color that when I think of her, I think of that color. Absolutely. She has a green car. Everything in her wardrobe, she has a green wardrobe.
Yeah. It's so funny. This is the classic my mum and dad behavior. My mum would go and buy a green top, for example. And my dad would come home and go, I don't recognize that. Usually mum would say, oh, like this old thing, or other people do. But what my mum used to say is, but John, you know I look good in green. And unfortunately, green isn't always available. So I have to buy a green top when I see a green top. So unfortunately, this one was just waiting for me on the shop floor and I had to buy it. He would buy into it every time. It was absolutely brilliant. She was a genius. But yeah, she never used this old thing anecdote. She would always say, oh, but John, you can't always buy green. And we both know I look great in it. She was brilliant.
Knowing that my wife will listen to this episode, she's going to start using that line now as well, by the way.
It's a great tactic. I love it.
That's fabulous. Translating now the pictures and the memories and the digital side of it. We lived and we grew up, you and I are of a similar generation. We grew up in the old days of analog photos where we would get them through the post. You'd take a picture on an analog camera, wouldn't know what you would get through the post. And then we filled out photo albums, classic photo albums. How does that now translate into a digital sense? Because when we had physical, it felt different. Some people still print on a regular basis because I know that they like to have something tangible. What you've done, as I understand it, is you've developed a platform around digital photos. Can you translate how those historic pictures perhaps may translate into the modern sense for you?
Yeah. The interesting thing about a physical photo, they smell nice. There's something tangible about picking one up. It's really good. But unless you've written something on the back, it's very hard to do much with that. So one of the things that we do is obviously taking a photo of a photo, all of a sudden turns that physical thing into a digital asset, and we can use those. Some people have said to me, what's the difference between just using my phone's photo storage? What's the point? But it is all about how you present a digital photo to someone with dementia. You can't put it in a whole load of clutter in a window. So accessible design for people with dementia has been key to our journey. So all of the research that we did around what would be the best, there's no standard written for what dementia design should look like, a software standard for that. But we've worked very hard to ensure that our technology is as accessible as possible. We bury almost nothing into menus. We don't make choices to start. The app opens and you just begin. So we are using the digital photo to enhance the ability to be able to use the technology. A single photo, wonderful, that's great. But actually, how do you turn that into the natural connections between photos that we just spoke about? How do you display names and places with an analog photo? We are all about bringing photos together, connecting them, displaying them in a way that is fear-free. You know, if you touch a button, that you've touched a button. We've made it very obvious that you haven't done something by mistake. We don't want the fear of technology to stop someone using it. Our app is designed to sit side by side with someone else because it's all about the ability to create conversation between two people. So there would always be two people there, but it is in an ideal world interactive for that person with dementia and supported by the person that is looking after them or sitting with them. I don't think that answered your question, Adam. Sorry.
It certainly gave me some understanding about it. I'm just wondering how those family photos and situational photos have an overlay of technology and perhaps how that detail is brought into the photographs to connect the person to the place or the moment or the time. Is there some clever technology around that as well?
Sorry, that makes much more sense. Thank you. Yes. So all of the photos get added to the app via our family admin portal. So that is a place where you can swiftly go and upload photos. Some of those photos will have If they were originally digital, photos will have location information, for example. We then use obvious facial recognition software and technology to be able to group together faces. So there might be 5 pictures of me, 10 pictures of my brother, 21 pictures that have got my mum in. Although we wouldn't have the name initially, we would just say, there's 21 faces that look like they're the same person. Can you name that person? So the only work I have to do as the family admin is name the person that the technology has grouped together. With the location, we'll check the location. If I've taken photos of my mum's album, the digital location will obviously be where I took the photo of the photo. So I might want to go in there and amend that. It might not be important. It's up to the family admin. Then what we do is we run all of those photos through our technology and generate these conversation prompts. So if you've got a memory of the face or the place, brilliant. We've already named that. But if you don't, as a carer or supporter, always being the one to think of the next thing to say is quite hard. It puts an onus onto that person. And there is a reason why social care has a real problem with retention of staff. It's because it's a very difficult job. It's very hard to be a carer, professional carer, or just a family carer of someone with dementia. So any tools in the market that support in the moment of care activity, we think is so important. So the buttons that we produce are the real game changer. These conversation prompts that analyze that picture and found the things that we believe are the most natural thing to talk about. So we referenced the plant earlier. We referenced the color black. We referenced things in the garden earlier. Those would be the conversation prompts that we would add and enhance to that picture to bring that picture to life in a conversation aid and conversation support. Then every time you press one of those buttons, you can guarantee that the next photo will be linked to the previous photo to try and support that natural conversation. So if we were talking about plants, guarantee that the next picture will have plants in it in some way, shape, or form. So I've translated the photo, I've understood what's in that photo, I've connected photos together, and I have presented that in a way that is as dementia-friendly as possible, simple and clear to use for people that are supporting, and it requires minimal training to be able to use it. A family admin portal that is actually quite fun to use.
Thank you for explaining that. That makes a little bit more sense to me. As you are describing that and taking that a step further, what occurs to me, there is a third leg to that stool. There is the photo, the patient, but it also requires upon a carer or a caregiver to be the third leg of that stool, to be the stimulus, does it not?
I see the pictures and the tool being the stimulus.
Yeah.
Either the person with dementia or the carer is the one that can then bring that to life and turn that prompt into conversation and interaction. Let's not kid ourselves that a dementia conversation, let me rephrase that. That's an awful way of saying it. But a conversation with someone with dementia is a conversation like you and I might have. It can be very stilted. It can go off in different directions. It can be tricky. But what you might see is a little twinkle in the eye. You might see a little smile. You might see a grimace. You never know. You might be at the stage in your dementia journey where just a squeeze of the hand is enough of an interaction to know that photo has done something and done something positive. The idea is the tool can be used for a long period of time. As we all know, the dementia journey is a very long one.
Thank you for explaining that. It can be, for sure. My own experience in our family, we've had a number of people both connected to our family and in our friendship groups around those. Every experience of dementia is entirely unique to that person, is it not? I'm particularly thinking about my uncle Geoff, who looked after his wife Brenda for 30 odd years through her own lived experience of having multiple sclerosis. After her sad passing, for 3 years, his decline was so steep and so rapid, and it was so tragic to see the change in him, noting that he'd given his entire life to support not just his family, but his wife's care through that, through her own challenges. It cuts across all social divides. As I say, I know from my cousin's point of view that they would have probably really valued something like this that could connect them with Geoff and bring those memories to the fore whilst he was so rapidly declining in front of their eyes. It's such a tragedy to see that diminishing person in front of your eyes, because it's not just mental, is it? It's physical. It's every aspect of dignity. It's a day-to-day care, feeding oneself, being safe, being protected in your home or in a care setting. I'd love to just bring that into your own experience, if you don't mind elaborating with your mother's experience, Louise.
Yeah, absolutely. My mum's journey has been longer. I think that out of respect, out of love, out of all of those positive things, I was covering up a lot of the symptoms that had started to emerge very early. So, an example of no longer being as confident to drive places, even familiar places, because sense of direction and the order of which way to go when became something that was obviously quite challenging. And so I would always say, oh, don't worry, I'll drive. Not a problem. Don't need to meet you there. I'll drive. I'll come pick you up. List writing. We always used to say that my mum had the ability to run the logistics of a small nation's army if necessary, because she could plan the life out of anything. She was incredible. But actually, all of a sudden, we started to really notice that the difference in her ability to plan became less good. Mum started to worry about Christmas time in like August because she was so worried about forgetting things or things not being right. And I think she knew that things were changing, but we never talked about it. I was like, no problem. I can help with that. I can do that. So out of, as I said at the beginning, love, respect, I supported, but I actually probably covered up some of the things that were going on. And I was not aware enough of many of the classic symptoms. And I wouldn't have even dreamt about that being a thing that my mum was going to have. It didn't even cross my mind. It was only probably 6 years ago that things got 6, 7 years ago that things took quite a dramatic turn. And I really needed support. I really needed extra help. I was going in to see mum 3 times a day when I was still doing the big corporate job, and going in before work, making sure that she was okay, spending time doing things that she loved to do. But she began to socially isolate herself because she was worried that people would find out. Rather than embrace that and share and tell people, she did the opposite, and she went very inward. And that meant that my support needed to be increased. So yeah, very difficult and very different times. But I very much agree with you that everybody's journey is individual and everybody's journey is different. But the one thing I 100% believe is that no matter what your dementia journey looks like, it will be enhanced by engaging in social connection with people. Conversation, no matter what that really looks like, is critical. It's absolutely critical. We're not trying to, picking up on something you said earlier, actually, we're not trying to surface memories. We're trying to encourage interaction without fear of failure. And I think that's subtly different. We're using familiar photographs as a stimulus, but it's not to try and get memories back. It's to make someone feel more comfortable with what they see, because there will be some degree of familiarity to those faces, places that we think is incredibly important.
Yeah, building on that, there's a clear distinction between, like you said, surfacing the memories and it being a memory test and bringing that into a realm of comfort for the person receiving this support. I'd love to now just take a step back a little bit, because you come from corporate life and you clearly made some very key decisions about the care for your mother. And you've translated that into a wonderful power for good. I'm also aware that you have secured funding for the platform that you've developed. And I'd love to hear more about what that translates into for the future of real life conversations, because we met at a conference recently and I saw the demonstration of the platform. I was instantly engaged with you and the team around that particular stand, and your energy was incredible in person. It is incredible, but you've made some really big decisions around that. And clearly other people and other corporations have seen something in you and decided to invest in this. Can you please just expand upon that, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, of course. Coming from corporate life is a huge transition to then running your own business. You said earlier about you expected that I was quite a visual person and a storyteller with pictures. And that is exactly who I was as the corporate girl. I was always about drawing. I was always the first one up on the whiteboard. I wanted to be able to bring things to life visually. That was very helpful when it came to storytelling and investor material. I feel like my years and years of creating pitch decks for senior leaders suddenly had the best purpose ever. Purpose was about bringing the story to life and the reasons to life. I am so glad that I didn't have this idea and concept when I was 5 years into my career or even 10 years into my career, because I feel like my career allowed and unlocked my ability to be able to tell a story and do the necessary research, explain the whys behind the business. I find it sometimes quite difficult talking about the business side of this. Now, I am trying to make sure that I can support my life by running a business, and that's with my other half as well. So it's about our life. But to an investor, this is about making money. And that's a very strange thing when you talk about dementia care, making money, dementia care. The return on the investment that the venture capital team want to make is based upon a volume business. It is based upon a very small monthly subscription cost, but it's about volume. So the volume comes because dementia is tragically one of the fastest growing, biggest impact diseases that there is out there today. It is a multi-million people problem and more globally. This is important for me to be able to explain and show that I am not trying to exploit individual families by making vast amounts of money from individual families. It's not. It's about trying to get to as many families as we possibly can. And that's why I think we were very attractive to a venture capital investor, because they can see that unfortunately dementia is so widespread and there is so little technology that supports in the moment of care, that this was a real opportunity. There is a lot of technology out there today that supports what I would consider much more the transactional side of care, medication tracking, have you had your water, food diaries, safety, all incredibly important technology that supports those with dementia. What technology is there that supports people in the moment of caring for that person? Very little.
Yeah, I think, and building on that point, when you're describing that, I was thinking that to any venture capital company, of course, they want to be doing good and be seen to be doing good, but yours is a values-driven business, isn't it?
Yeah.
It might be a business in the fact that, of course, it costs for technology, it costs for support, and all the things that are expected around that. But the values are what drives it, not the financial value. That was the thing that was resonating as you were saying that. And I just wanted to make that point because ultimately, as you say, there are many people who are touched by dementia, whether it's within their immediate family or friends. I'd just like to also elaborate on the point that you and I have spoken about before, which is that this seems to be something that affects women an awful lot through the results of menopause, through aging, through stress, through lack of sleep. There are many factors, aren't there, around that? Perhaps if you could just speak to that point, because prior to our conversation today, I was walking my dog this morning, listening to another podcast on dementia, and I was trying to just get more language around dementia into my lexicon. I came across this particular one where they were talking about stimulation, supply, and sleep. And it was a guy called Dr. Tommy Wood I was listening to. He talks about the importance of sleep, the importance of nutrition, and the importance of stimulation, namely neurological stimulation, which is what your product and app does. Can I just play that back to you? And I'd love to hear your thoughts around those thoughts.
Wonderful. It's a fantastic way of thinking about it, the importance of sleep there for sure. I can see that every day with my mum, actually. One thing I want to make sure is really clear. I am not an expert on dementia. I have a lot of lived experience, and I see and speak to a lot of people that are involved in dementia care. So I am no expert. I have immersed myself into this world, and so I certainly understand a lot more than I used to. My perspective, however, is all of those things you just described are key. The female thing, the woman thing, I am sure there's vast amounts of data out there around the whys it affects women and why many women can be diagnosed earlier and get support earlier. But for me, the impact on women is statistically showing up so much more because of their involvement in the care of others that have dementia. So they are much more likely to be the primary supporter or carer of someone with dementia. So when you look at the statistics that show dementia affects women more than men, I think we need to look at that in the whole and not just the person that has the disease. Who is it that is most likely to be looking after someone with dementia? That's where the needle really swings towards the female side.
An extraordinary point you make there. You've absolutely hit it on the head there. Dare I say it as well, the immediate thought was women generally outlive men. In a heteronormative world, men and women, husbands and wives, this is a very broad brush. Certainly in my experience, the women in the people that I know and love closest to me are outliving the men in their lives. So to your point, yes, there is a heavy lift around caregiving until it then relies upon that individual to look after themselves, namely a woman. This is key in my mind as well, for many reasons. At this point, I just wonder, is there anything that we haven't touched upon, Louise, that you'd like to bring to the conversation? Because I've asked you several questions and delved into your lived experience, but is there anything that we've left out there that we should have perhaps covered that we haven't touched upon today?
I think one of the things that is very obvious right now is that the world of dementia care is really coming to the forefront of the press. People have much better understanding of dementia as a disease, not an in-depth understanding of what dementia is all about, of course, but I think it is becoming more widely talked about, which is incredibly positive. I think along the same journey as mental health and the approach to how we deal with mental health, it is no longer as much of a taboo topic to talk about. The generation at the moment that are more likely to have dementia at the moment are only just emerging as the generation where mental health has even been something that might be discussed, let alone discussed widely at the dinner table, for example. But I think as we come through, as you and I move into that another 10, 20 years, I think we'll be in a very different space anyway, because people's approach to mental health problems are much more likely to be shared, discussed, talked about. It's much more tolerated. With that, I think the understanding of the pharmacological, I'm on the wrong show to have an issue with that, but that word, there has been, I think, quite a heavy bias towards the medical side of dementia care in the past. And I think we are now emerging around different thinking on what the that word needs to look like. Because for me, this is how I think the next 10, 20 years is going to transform what dementia care looks like. And I really hope that.
Thank you. That's really provided a very rich insight around that. I'll use the word around that non-pharmacological approach.
It's tricky for a layman.
Tricky one. It's a tricky one. My other favorite word is pharmaceutical, but only because I studied pharmaceutical sciences. But there you go. Some people struggle with that one, but we did pharmacology as part of it, interestingly. You've given us some really timely reminders about what's important in carers, in caregivers. I guess I just wanted to say and recognize that this does put an enormous strain and stress on someone like yourself who is a caregiver to your mother. Now, I know you do that willingly, absolutely. You've made changes in your life and you've clearly put your mother's well-being and care central to everything that you're doing, as well as having built this incredible platform around it. I just want to absolutely applaud you for doing that and the intention behind it, because as I say, when I met you in person, your energy absolutely shines through everything you do.
Thank you.
I always like to finish with a quick fire round, Louise. I wonder, what is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
I matter too.
What are the top 3 qualities you value most when building a team?
Honesty, openness to new ideas, hard graft.
What is your favorite thing outside of work?
The water.
In my picture behind me, there we go. Is there anywhere particularly you like to be around the water?
I love to sail. That's my hobby. That's my mental space. It's the place where I think about everything and nothing all at the same time. There's always something to do when you're sailing. There's always something to think about, whether it's the wind, the water, whatever it might be. It allows my brain to still be busy and active. I am not very good at doing nothing. Sailing is just, for me, the absolute best thing to do to keep my brain very busy. In those other moments, I find that stuff that potters around in the back of my head will come to the fore without nearly as much effort as trying to force my brain into thinking about what I need it to think about. So I will always be at my happiest on the water. I think I might have been a fish in a previous life.
A visual learning fish.
Yes, absolutely. May I tell you one story about the visual? It immediately came into my head, corporate life, visual. I used to sit with my team, American Express, and I used to have a desk in the corner. Occasionally I would sit just thinking, and I'd often have my head in my hands while I was just looking at something. And apparently what I often used to do was stand up quite quickly and then march towards the printer. And there was this collective sigh of, oh no, because I would come back with sheets of A3 paper. And what that meant was I was just about to empty my head into a mind map of all of the things that were on my mind. And the team would go, oh no, this is going to result in a whole load of work for us because she's emptying her head. For me, a mind map is a beautiful thing. And it is the way that I can explain how things link together, how things can be. That was immediately in my head when you talked about me being a visual person, the collective sigh from my team of me going to collect A3 print paper from the printer.
Just to connect that to water, that's a thought shower.
Play, there you go.
Finally, what is your number one golden rule in life and in business, Louise?
Gosh, this is a toughie. I think my dad always used to say to me when I was a young girl, Louise, you might not be the best at school, you might not be the best academically, but you were born with common sense. And one thing you will realize is that common sense is not very common. Use it well and use it wisely, and you will go far. So I always try and have a common sense approach to everything that I do. And my dad will stay in my head forever because of that.
I think it's a really lovely way to bring the conversation to a close. I don't actually want this conversation to finish, but I just need to give reference to the fact that as a natural storyteller who has turned an accessible design for the world of dementia into so many incredible memories and lived experiences for both carers, caregivers, and I hate to use the word patients, but ultimately this is about people who live with dementia. This is about making life more accessible for them, for the lives that they're leading. And the positivity with which you frame that is so remarkable and so powerful. I'm sure this will resonate so deeply with the followers and the listeners and the people watching this podcast. It's just been so instructive to speak to you today, Louise, and I really appreciate you taking the time. For anyone who wants to reach out to you in real life conversations, what's the best way of making contact with you?
Go to the website, ReelLife Conversations, REEL, lifeconversations.com. My email address is on there, and I would talk about dementia until I'm blue in the face. So please reach out. I'd be delighted to hear from you. I'm obviously on LinkedIn and all of those things as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time today, Louise. It's been a pleasure to welcome you on Pharma Prescribed, and I really do look forward to continue the conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.